Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're zooming in on a specific piece of geography. It's one the sources describe not just as landscape, but really as the physical contested spine of history, and maybe the future stage for some huge prophetic events. The mountains of Israel.
Right.
We've got quite a stack of material here: prophetic texts, Ezekiel, Zechariah, historical accounts, contemporary analysis too. And we're focusing tightly on this region, often called Judea and Samaria today, or, the West Bank.
Exactly. And our mission really is to get the full weight of this location. We're trying to unpack why these mountains keep being called this mute testimony about the land, who belongs there, and how they become so central to, major end-time scenarios.
Okay, let's unpack that because, this is where it gets really interesting, doesn't it? This range running like this powerful spine right through the middle of Israel. It's been fought over for millennia, suffered the scorn of nations, as the text put it. Let's get the physical reality first.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not just like a backdrop. It is the high ground. We're talking a major range. It starts up near the Jezreel Valley, goes all the way down past Hebron, inland from the coast, and it climbs quite high. Jerusalem's near the peak, about, 2,700 feet up?
And that elevation, that centrality, that's what makes it the strategic heartland. If you control these mountains, you pretty much control the land. And geographically, this is bang on biblical Judea and Samaria.
And if you think about Israel's historical identity, the key cities were built on these mountains. That makes sense, right? Defensible positions, water sources. You've got Jerusalem, obviously the Temple Mount there, Hebron, Bethlehem, Shechem, Shiloh. Basically, ancient Israel story is written right into these hills.
Right. And then after the dispersion, AD 70, AD 135, Romans, this mountain spine just gets passed around. It's almost like dizzying, those list of groups who claimed it.
Oh, it is. Think about it. Rome, then the Byzantine Christians, then various Arab Muslim caliphates, Mayyads, Abbasids, Fatimites, then the Crusaders swoop in.
Then the Ottomans for centuries.
Right, Ottomans. Then after World War I, Great Britain under the Mandate. And they did something pretty significant, didn't they? Carved off 75% of the Mandate land to create Transjordan.
Yeah, that's a huge point. And then, post-48, Jordan annexed this area, held it until 67, and that's when the sources say the enemy claimed, aha, the ancient heights have become our possession. So the whole current controversy really ignites when Israel regains this high ground in 1967.
Exactly. And the sources we looked at are really focused on the fallout from 67. They keep mentioning how the mountains have suffered the scorn of the nations, become the object of people's malicious talk and slander.
Okay, and here we need to be really clear. We're talking about the specific viewpoint in some of the sources. One contemporary analysis we reviewed, it frames the whole Palestinian issue as, quote, cleverly concocted out of malice to divide Israel. Now, we're just reporting that viewpoint as it appears in the source, not endorsing it, but it shows the intensity of this conflict.
And that intensity, that contention, is exactly why they're called a mute testimony. The mountains themselves, they just stand there, God's land, according to the sources. They stand silent against, world opinion about who should control them. Ezekiel 36 is key here. God calls it my land, promises it eternally, unconditionally to the house of Israel.
So the mountains are sort of silently prophesying just by being there. What's the substance of that promise in Ezekiel? What's the future he lays out for these hills?
It's a promise of, radical restoration, completely flipping the script on centuries of desolation. It's basically threefold. One, the land becomes fruitful again for its people. Two, the house of Israel returns, multiplies on the mountains, possesses them, inherits them. And three, crucially, they won't have to hear the taunts and scorn of nations anymore. It's this picture of secure dwelling, prosperity, right where all the conflict used to be.
That idea, secure dwelling, that's a huge pivot, isn't it? Because it links that historical struggle right into end times prophecy. The security of the people back on these mountains. That's described as the trigger, the prerequisite for a massive invasion.
That's exactly right. These same mountains of Israel are named repeatedly as the specific target for the Gog-Magog invasion. Ezekiel 38 and 39 go into incredible detail about this.
Okay, who's involved in this invasion? The sources name names, right, which is important for timing.
They do. The main figure is Gog, from Magog, often interpreted, as you know in these sources, as Russia or a leader from that region, leading this big coalition, primarily northern and Islamic nations. The text lists Persia, which is Iran today, Togarmah, often linked to Turkey, Cushan-Put, usually identified as Sudan, maybe Libya.
And the timing is critical. It happens in the latter years after the Jewish people are gathered back from many nations, specifically to the mountains of Israel, which had long been a continual waste.
Right. So the current situation, the return, the settlements on the mountains in 67. Many see that as fulfillment fulfilling this key geographic condition, setting the stage, basically. The invaders, they're motivated partly by greed, wanting spoil, but also, it seems, by sheer contempt.
How does the invasion start? I mean, the invaders look at Israel, call it the land of unwalled villages, people living securely. How can they be living securely if this massive invasion is coming? What does securely mean there?
That's a really important question. The sources argue it's a God-given security, a confidence not based on, say, physical walls or military might alone. But the invaders see this security as vulnerability. Like, look, they're exposed, easy pickings. Some analysis even suggests the invasion might be, in part, an attempt to enforce a land division, like a two-state solution against Israel's will.
But wait, if God promised this security back in chapter 36, why would he then kind of force an invasion? Seems contradictory.
Yeah, that's the theological twist, isn't it? The sources stress that God himself initiates this. He says he puts hooks in Gog's jaws, pulls him into this conflict. It's not punishment for Israel. It's God orchestrating a moment to show his power to the whole world.
And the result is devastating, and specifically centered on this geography. The mountains become an altar.
Exactly that, an altar of judgment. The armies fall supernaturally on the mountains of Israel. God says he calls for his sword against them on all my mountains. And it's accompanied by this huge earthquake in Israel. So intense, it throws down mountains, collapses paths, levels walls, a total cataclysm.
Wow, it's pretty intense picturing that kind of destruction on a place you can literally point to on a map. The mountains are the graveyard for this invading force.
They are. It's called a great sacrifice. The bodies are left for birds and beasts. The judgment is undeniable, visible. And the ultimate point, the so what of it all, according to the sources, God uses this specific contested spot to put his power on display globally, so the nations may know me when I shall be sanctified through you before their eyes. It's about his reputation.
Okay, so that invasion scenario shifts us towards the final moments, the Great Tribulation period. And the mountains suddenly take on a very different role. Not judgment, but refuge.
Yes, the Olivet Discourse, Matthew 24, Jesus is teaching on the Temple Mount. He gives very specific instructions for people living in Judea at that future time, when they see the abomination of desolation standing in the holy place.
Let's pause there. Abomination of desolation. What's the understanding of that?
Generally interpreted as a key event marking the midpoint of the tribulation, likely the Antichrist setting up an idol of himself or committing some ultimate sacrilege, probably in a rebuilt temple. And that act kicks off the worst period of persecution, the Great Tribulation.
And the instruction is urgent, extremely urgent. Don't go back for your coat, don't go down from the housetop. Just flee. Flee where?
Flee to the mountains. Specifically, the mountains surrounding Jerusalem, the mountains of Judea, they become a literal physical hiding place, a refuge during that time of intense persecution.
Okay. But then, for the absolute climax, the end of the Armageddon campaign, the focus narrows again. Not just any mountains, but one specific, iconic mountain, the Mount of Olives.
That's a critical distinction.
Yeah.
According to dispensational interpretations, Christ's actual physical return happens there. He descends upon the Mount of Olives to defeat his enemies gathered against Jerusalem and start his millennial kingdom. It's this incredible convergence of prophecy in a specific place.
And the mountain itself changes, physically.
Yeah, Zechariah 14 describes it. When the Lord steps onto the Mount of Olives to defend Jerusalem, it splits in two, east to west. Creates this huge valley, a pathway for escape and deliverance for those trapped in the city. The landscape literally reshapes itself for the final rescue.
And then there's one last kind of chilling contrast involving mountains right at the very end of that period. He said the faithful flee to the mountains earlier for safety.
Right, but at the very end, Revelation describes the kings, the commanders, the powerful people of the earth. They're doing the opposite. They're trying to hide among the rocks of the mountains, calling for the mountains to fall on them, to hide them from the wrath of God, the Lamb on the throne.
Wow. So the same geography serves as salvation or a failed hiding place, depending on who you are.
Exactly. It's the ultimate reversal.
Okay, so let's try and synthesize this for you, our listener. Two massive roles for these mountains. On one hand, they're this mute testimony to God's promise of restoration, prosperity, secure dwelling. On the other, they are the precise geographic stage for what the sources describe as the greatest supernatural judgment ever.
And connecting that back to the bigger picture, that secure dwelling of the Jewish people on the mountains. The sources are emphatic. It's God-given. It's not ultimately about walls or armies or treaties. It's proof, they argue, that God himself is their protection, fulfilling his promise to be a wall of fire around Israel.
So we'll leave you with this final thought to chew on, drawn straight from Ezekiel's promises. God explicitly said the mountains will never again deprive people of their children. What kind of future, what kind of peace, political, prophetic, maybe both, would actually be needed for that specific ancient curse of loss and devastation to be lifted forever from this heartland? Something to think about. We'll explore more next time on The Deep Dive.